How is she doing, etc.?
It's my understanding that the victim is doing very well. She sounds like a really strong, feisty woman who was able to fight off this attacker and is holding up okay with the support of some friends and family members today. She's in her mid-40s. She does live in Boulder, and she was hiking a trail that she's quite familiar with.
How did she get away from him?
Well, maybe we could start a little bit back at the beginning. So it sounds as if she was hiking this trail on her own right around 8:40 and was actually on the phone with a sister who was in another state at the time. She had her cell phone with her, was having a conversation with her sister. She saw this man come onto the trail and actually said something right then and there to her sister about how a strange man had come onto the trail. He seemed to apparently be mumbling to himself a little bit. At one point he did approach her and said something to the effect of, "Can I be with you?" She said no and started walking a little bit more quickly because she was concerned that the strange man had come up to her. She then said they sort of played this game where at one point he came up so close behind her, she said, "Am I in your way? Would you like to pass me?" And he did. And then she would kind of slow down and she would come around him. And this just kind of back and forth of who was going to be in front for a while. She was continuing to kind of get a little suspicious at this point and was still talking to her sister on the phone when suddenly she felt him come up behind her. She did yell to her sister in the phone, "I'm being attacked on the trail." She at that point dropped her phone and began going hand-to-hand combat with this man to try to stop him from attacking her. According to her, his first sort of attack was to try to rip off her clothing, the lower half of her clothing, her shorts, and he did punch her at least once in the face. She thinks she was able to get a good punch in to him as well, so it was definitely a fist-to-fist kind of situation. She was able to break free of his grip and ran to a nearby house where there were some people inside who were willing to come to her aid.
Sarah, there was an attack about a week and a half ago up in Rocky Mountain National Park, something similar. Any connection?
Our detectives are familiar with that attack, and they certainly will be comparing notes with the authorities in that area, but at this point there's no evidence that the two are connected. She did indicate, the victim has indicated to us that at one point the suspect was holding a knife. It's unclear whether he ever pushed that up against her or was brandishing it. She described it as brandishing a knife. So we are absolutely trying to let people know that if they are on the trails, particularly by themselves, they should trust their instincts. This woman did everything she should once she realized she was in danger in terms of fighting back and getting to a neighbor's house for safety.
Do you advise them to hike together as opposed to singly? Or?
You know, this was a very unfortunate situation. It was a one-time situation, best that we can tell. We don't want people to overreact to it. On the other hand, in general, it's a very good idea to have a hiking partner, try to go to trails on more populated times of the day. This was, you know, right around 8:30. It was starting to be darker, dusk. She had a cell phone, which was great. She had a means of communicating. That's a great tool to have, but it's not going to protect you if you're under attack. One of the things we discovered is the cell phones, when you look at the calls that came in. So we think this happened right around 8:40, 8:45-ish. The first call came in at 8:57 from the mom and sister out of state because they called 911 as soon as she said she was being attacked and they couldn't speak with her anymore. The next call came in from the victim 1 minute later, and a minute after that, a friend of the victim and the sister, because after the sister got off the phone with 911, she called the only other person she knew in Boulder and said, "I need your help," and so he also called. So we had 3 calls within a minute apiece of one another.
How did you find the suspect?
Okay, so totally separate from this incident, we were looking for this suspect because on Saturday night he got into an altercation with family members. We're going to be real broad about what happened there because that's still in the very preliminary stages of the investigation, but essentially he's accused of trying to sexually assault a family member on Saturday night. A friend of the family member intervened and there was a fight that ensued there, and then we believe that between Saturday night and Sunday when this attack occurred, the suspect may have been involved in some property crimes throughout Boulder. So around 9:45 Sunday night, about an hour and 45 minutes after about an hour after this incident happened, somebody who was aware of the Saturday night crime called 911 and said, this guy who you guys are looking for is at my next door neighbor's house, and I know you want him because he tried to sexually assault a family member, so you should come and get him. Well, it turned out the location he was at was relatively close to the trailhead, within walking distance. And once detectives started talking to him and realizing how close they were to the trailhead, and officers putting 2 and 2 together really with this victim's description, we were able to bring the victim over to do a show, what we call a show up, where she drove by and she said she was 100% certain that it was him. So we were able to get him into custody very shortly after the crime occurred. We had been actively looking for him ever since the Saturday night crimes, but we've been unable to locate him.
Do you know what's to blame for this unusual behavior, very unstable?
We don't really have an idea of what set off this spree. It definitely was a condensed period of violence and property crimes. We know that our department, the police department, has had prior contact with him on domestic violence and drug type related charges, but we don't know what prompted this particular bout of crime. We're just very fortunate that both in the case on Saturday night with the family member and the case on Sunday night with the woman who he didn't know, that both of those women were able to fight him off and avoid being victimized any more than they already were.